Yes, you're live.
Good. Okay, excellent. So, yeah, I mean, maybe the first thing I should point out is there's recently been a name change. So it's now Unit4 FP&A instead of Unit4 Prevero. Incidentally, it's still, rose by any other name, of course. But in the next sort of half hour, just under, with any luck, I'm going to take you through, first of all, what Unit4 FP&A is, and then once we've done that, we'll actually have a look at some of the capability. So let's get cracking first of all with a couple of slides just around positioning and understanding what exactly Unit4 FP&A is and what it offers, and maybe how it's different to some of the, or what makes it unique to some of the other offerings within Unit4. So let's start off really sort of understand what is it that people do every day. Well, every day, every organization and everybody within every organization is fundamentally trying to answer 4 questions. They're time-based, how have we done, how are we doing, where are we going, and what should we be doing? Now, if we start off by taking those first 2 questions as one for the time being. So typically organizations, as you know, equip themselves with back-end execution systems to answer these 2 questions. These systems are record, typically things like ERP, talent management, resource scheduling, financial management, and so on. Now, these platforms are perfect for that job. They answer these 2 questions because they enforce a consistent process. It offers predictable reliability. We know the shape, the size of the data, no matter how recent it's still in the past. Therefore, we know everything about the data that we're collecting. And as you know, Unit4 offer solutions already to answer these questions. Now, on the other hand, the next 2 questions deal with real-world variability. So, it's all about the forward-looking nature of things. So far all we've done is spoken about that rear view mirror, if you like, what has happened. But when you think about all of those different things that can happen to any organization on any day of the week in the real world, that list must be endless. I mean, there's a few up here. Everything from fickle demand, changing customer tastes, emerging markets, so on and so forth. You could list a whole bunch. So the question really is, well, how do we bridge that gap between the required structure of our systems of record and the consistent and constant change of the real world variability? So typically organizations turn to a flexible solution, something like Excel as an example. Excel is a great personal productivity tool. It's quick, it's easy to pick up, it's flexible. So, you may go, well, why are you telling us this? What's the big deal? Well, let's just understand this status quo. Let's understand what it is that we're trying to do. We're trying to make business critical decisions based on reliable information. Yet, if we really think about it, our landscape probably looks a little bit more like this. And I think we're probably doing it. We're doing it a favour. This scribble here is probably nowhere near the complexity and the mess that maybe we find ourselves in with an Excel-centric or a shadow system-centric environment. We start off trying to answer one question, load some data, get the answer. Then we need to ask that same question, I don't know, next month, next week, maybe the next day. Potentially we start finding more questions that we need to ask. We find more answers we didn't know we needed. And all this time, that shadow system is proliferating. We're getting more and more of them. So why is this an issue? Well, like I've already said, Excel and solutions like this are personal productivity tools. So we're using these systems more like an actual database. Now, by this, I mean that there's information held within these shadow systems that does not exist anywhere else in the organization. And this is a big issue. Another couple of things I'd like to point out, it's incredibly resource intensive. It lacks accountability. You often see in a cell, there's some formula with a +6 on the end. What's that about? Who did that? It lacks security. It's completely open to human error. And further to this, there's multiple spreadsheets with multiple versions of the truth. So fundamentally, and I think this is the big issue here, fundamentally, we cannot trust the data on which we're deciding the future direction of our organization. And this is the case with all sorts of shadow systems. We spend all of our time auditing spreadsheets, very little time actually adding value, actually doing the job that we want to be doing. Now, on top of this, when you think about that current state of play, a lot of organizations are incredibly silo-based, very disjointed, data in various locations, multiple versions of that data, as I say. And by the time that the results are ready to be reported on, by the time you've collated all of the information coming from your disparate users, by the time you're ready to analyze, the time has passed. This means that when, case in point at the moment, when volatility strikes, we're not really in a position to react because we don't have sight of, we don't have visibility into the current state of play. So by the time we've tried to test various different scenarios, that critical time to execute has passed. Fundamentally, we can't be as agile as the ever-changing environment to which we're trying to respond. So, it's kind of no wonder that we haven't spoken about that last question just yet. That final one. We're so bogged down trying to understand how to bridge the gap between that structure of our source systems and the real world volatility. Well, it's interesting. Very few organizations get to this last question, the what should we be doing? Now, the what should we be doing question, again, forward looking, is all about using historical data behavior and patterns to gain insight and predict likely outcomes. Fundamentally, it's what artificial intelligence is starting to bring to the table. Typically, I think, if organizations are doing this, albeit another third-party tool requires further data transfer between environments, it increases risk. Yet leveraging all of that rich knowledge tied up and hidden in your data sets could really unlock a world of potential. You'd be able to start asking the system for its opinion, augment that with your own, and create much more reliable and well-founded output. Now, it's really these last two, you could argue last three questions that Unit4 FP&A focuses on and delivers the answer to. So let's just spend a few moments understanding what is it that Unit4 FP&A is. So I think I sum it up by saying it's a performance management and analysis platform. It manages data volumes, it manages complexity, but it still offers that sort of Excel-like, if you like, flexibility. But I can't not mention the fact that it also includes enterprise class security, which is incredibly important. We'll get on to all of that in a moment. I think you could probably sum it up by saying that you get all of the benefits, all of the capability and more, I'd argue, of tools such as Excel, such as these shadow systems, but without the headache. This fundamentally then leads to a single, secure, centralized version of the truth. I think multi-user collaboration is incredibly important as well. So multiple users can log on at the same time and interact with the same set of data. And all of this leads to an increase in trust, reliability, agility, and speed. Now, a couple of other points that I think we should probably mention. I called it a platform. Now, I chose the word platform specifically because Unit4 FP&A is much more than just a modeling tool, like Excel. It comes with pre-built, highly configurable content around the core financials, along with detailed, underpinning, subject-specific planning content. So out of the box, it includes a fully integrated, configurable, as I say, income expenditure, if you call that profit and loss, or a SOCI, or however you refer to statement of revenue expenses, however you refer to that financial statement. It includes that, income expenditure, let's say, for the time being, a balance sheet and also cash flow, and they're all integrated, as I say, and this drastically decreases time to value and increases return on investment, because you can be up and running in a much shorter time frame rather than having to build everything from scratch. You've already got a basis out of the box, and we will be looking at that in just a moment. Now, this is much more than just a demo library like you might find in other offerings. These pre-built applications are highly configurable and highly usable. Just to tell you a little bit more about some of those applications there. Unit4 FP&A also offers pre-built configurable applications around financial consolidations, IFRS 16. In fact, you can see there's a couple of other items up there, risk management, and so on. All of these are designed to get you adding value much more quickly. You've got a basis to build on. Now, Unit4 FP&A at its heart is a planning modeling tool. So of course, any specific models that you require, any tweaks, any changes, if you need to build out, if you need to build under, horizontally, vertically, then all of that can be easily accommodated. You can flexibly add that to your environment. I think a few other key points I'll mention before we look at the solution itself. Unit4 FP&A also offers alerts and notifications out of the box. This is all about connecting people. So it's making sure we've got the right people doing the right things at the right time. Like I said, it's about joining people up, joining people with information, joining people with processes. On top of this, there's also simulations for best case, worst case scenario planning. I'll give you a couple of examples as we step through in a moment. Workflows to boost visibility, to increase accountability, make sure we know what status, what stage we're at in the process. There's also interactive dashboards with rich, highly graphical, user-driven self-service analytics. I think that's a key point when it comes to planning and budgeting. It's not just a case of collecting data. Yeah, of course, there are tools that allow you to collect data, but this is much more. The planning process is much more than just about collecting data. It's about having an opinion on the data that I'm putting into the system, and how can I underpin that opinion in any better way than understanding the data. So you've got those dashboards for graphical representations, self-service analytics to ask those key questions of why and how. That can be done pre, post, during the planning process. It's all in the single application. Now, when you think back to the 4 questions we were speaking about earlier, that final one, what should we be doing? Well, we offer built-in artificial intelligence, and this can be used to predict future positions based on, like I've said, that historical data behavior. And this plays a critical role, I would argue, in consensus planning, making sure that your opinions, the data that you're entering is well founded. The system can start telling you, based on how you've performed in the past, this is a reasonable outlook and indication for the future. Further to this, there's also Microsoft integration for PowerPoint, Word, and Excel. You're never going to get Excel out of finance. You also want to create board packs, management packs, and we can integrate that live data. The plan changes at the last minute. There's a last minute journal from an actuals point of view. Then obviously you'd want that to impact your board packs, your management packs, and all of your reports, so that you're making sure that you're working with the current live set of data. I think probably something that's not up there that's hugely important, apart from integrating directly with our own underlying data sources, we're also data source agnostic. So you're able to connect to all sorts of different underlying data sources that allows you to augment data, augment structure from across the organization, which leads to a much more holistic, much more joined up, a connected view. You're able to bring in all of that rich data across the organization to help you support, or to support you, I should say, in your planning process. So let's have a look at the solution itself. I should also point out this last slide, that those 4 questions, as you can see, are all answered by Unit4. So with that then, let's have a look at the solution. We've got a little while to do this. So let me just introduce you to some things. I'm going to log on as administrator. So I've got access to the full depth, breadth, capability of the solution. Clearly there's security to make sure that I can only see and do what I'm supposed to see and do. In this case, this is the integrated financial planning application. The main menu that I'm greeted with can be configured. If you don't like green, if you don't like the picture, you can obviously put your own logos, your own colors, it's free-form layout, however you'd like it to look, you're able to achieve that. Like I say, calling back to that security, if maybe one of the budget holders logs in, the only thing they can see is their budget entry screen. However, there's a full model that then takes all of that rich detail, augments it with the rest of the data, and turns it into information on which you can base your business decisions. So in this example, I'm able to access all areas of the solution. And here in the reporting section, you can see I've got a few different views of my P&L, as we've called it here, but this could be statement of revenue expenses, this could be income statement, however you want to refer to it. There's also balance sheet and cash flow reports as well. Now, okay, there's only 4 of each, but to create a report, very, very straightforward action. The main thing is you've got your structures already there, and you're able to create the different reports, the different views of this of these statements as you see fit. Like I say as well, now I will take a moment and just jump into one of those statements in a moment. But like I say, the integrated financial planning application also comes with pre-built planning or sub-planning modules such as cost planning, sales planning, revenue planning, investment planning, loan planning, provision planning, project planning, HR, whatever it may be. These give you a good start of 10, and we'll touch on maybe one or two of them as we had time, as well as some ad hoc analysis in the form of dashboarding. So there's a reasonable amount to see. Let's just touch on a few bits and bobs. Let's start off with the profit and loss. So in this case, I'm looking at a profit and loss statement here where I've got my different scenarios and time horizons across the top. Now, bearing in mind, this can be laid out as you want it to be laid out. Maybe I might want my months across the top, cost centers down the side. Of course you can. This is just one of the out of the box reports. Down the side, we've got our chart of accounts. So clearly part of the configuration process is to load your own chart of accounts, load your trial balance, load any plans and forecasts that you might have, and straight away you can start working with, your monthly reporting. The other things to consider are the other points of analysis. So we've got the sense of periods, different versions, and those different versions can be the relevant level of detail per time. So my plan may become less granular. Maybe plan for the next year is by month, but as we start stepping through time, maybe the year after that is by quarters, half years, and then total years. So you can be very specific about the level of detail that you need to go into per forward-looking statement. Out of the box, we've got those best case, worst case scenario planning. So we could have Brexit case, COVID-19 case. We're able to see, well, what happens if interest rates go down? What happens if costs were to shoot up? How's that going to affect my bottom line? How's that going to affect the rest of my organization? And like I say, that's out of the box capability. In this example, we're dealing with three main points of analysis here: legal entity, profit center, and cost center. And these could be replaced, added to, reduced based on your requirements. So if you didn't have a sense of legal entity or profit center, for example, you might change that to project, you might remove it entirely. That's all part of the configuration stage. Now you'll notice here, if I go in and maybe choose a different legal entity, if you keep an eye on the number in the back, that 357, the moment I make the change, we see it update. So this is all context sensitive. It's a template rather than a report. Now, clearly you can export this to Excel. You can export this to a PDF. In fact, the system can generate PDFs, Excel outputs for you and burst those to the relevant users. By that, I mean that maybe the user for this specific cost center needs to get a P&L. So the system will be able to cycle through these selections, make the relevant selections, create the report and email those to the users. Let's jump back to the landing page. In fact, I forgot, I need to just show you another couple of things in here. There's also actions. Any actions can be added to cells. In this case, I can point and click, and the action allows me to drill down into detail. And of course, I might even add an action to a specific value where I point and click and drill through to maybe another report, maybe by months, or maybe even drill through to the underlying data in my source system. So wherever I click here, it shows me that rich detail. Let's just take a moment to have a look at one or two of the planning capabilities. So just as an example, let's have a look at, say, cost planning piece, where here we've got our list of accounts that are related or relevant for this intersection, for this cost center, for this period, and so on and so forth. You'll see how that version is following me through. So I'm currently working on the base case. Now, what I'm looking at here are two forecasts and my plan for next year, which is currently empty. Of course, I can change whichever plan I want to compare and look at. So maybe I might be interested in seeing actuals for current year, or indeed any one of the other statements there. So the first thing I might want to do is say, well, let's copy my forecast for the current year into my plan for the next year, just as a starting point. Bear in mind as well, this is per cost center. So each individual cost center would get a chance to log in deal with the accounts that are relevant to them, and start working with their plans for the following year. This is all wrapped up as well within workflow. So we have a sense of workflow here to keep track of who's changing what, where we are in the process. Now, of course, it's much more than just copying data. We can get in and maybe start making some changes, and you'll see as I'm making those changes. In fact, let's put a really big change in there. Let's go for 1 million. You'll see how that automatically adds up in real time. Let's change that back to, let's try typing in a proper number this time. 1K. There we go, and you'll see that becomes more reasonable. Now you can actually do this data entry at any level. So if I type in 20K here, you'll see how that allocates across time. Now, if there is no profile, then you're able to allocate, say, evenly. So there we get 120K, spread evenly. We might decide that actually we just want to increase this by 10%. So typing in that plus 10% increases that. There's also the capability of using out-of-the-box allocation. So we could say allocate a value according to the profile of data held elsewhere. So how a different cost center performed, how a different account performed. And indeed, like you've seen, at any level, we might decide, well, actually, let's just reduce that to 3.5 million. And you'll see how that automatically updates. Now, it's not only numeric data, it's also textual information. So I might decide I want to have a bit of a comment on this plan, so I can enter some textual information there as well, along with the capability of then interacting with that workflow. And the moment I submit the data, we'll then see how I can no longer change these values. The workflow can be tracked, and we're able to see who's doing what, where we are in the process, approve and reject. And of course, the workflow can be as sophisticated or as simplistic as you need it to be. Now, that's a very brief view into some standard cost planning there. A couple of other things I'd like to point out briefly. From a planning point of view, we can also start using some AI capability. So in this example, we've got our AI formula telling us what it believes the value is going to be based on historical behavior, so based on the historical data. We can also interact with our AI using a simple right click. So if we've have a look at this forecast assistant option, I'm able to say, take a look back at all of my data. In fact, let's do this just for one product, just here. So take a look back at how my product has performed in the past. I can then, with a right click, invoke my forecasting assistant, and the solution then will allow you to choose a method, be it something like exponential smoothing, or pretty standard method, or alternatively a deep learning method, which looks back at the profile of your data and predicts where you might be in the future. So we can use that, we can leverage that as our first pass. We might then decide to actually expect that to be slightly higher. So of course I can augment that with my version of reality. Now, all of that is integrating directly with the P&L. It's integrating directly with the core financial statements. The final thing I'd like to point out the last few moments is then some dashboarding. So if we have a look at, say, the financial reporting within the same screen, so the same instance, not only do I have access to those standardized reports, but I've also got access to graphical content as well. So turning that data into information. And all of this is entirely interactive. So if I wanted to drill down and understand, well, how's my best case versus my base case? What does that look like in this area of my accounts? Maybe even drill through on the plan of next year. So I'm now looking at my quarters, what happened specifically within Q3, and I'm able to drill down into those areas. Again, being able to select and deselect the items, maybe even drill back up through that hierarchy, so it's left a breadcrumb trail for me to interact with. So I'm able to start interacting with that data the moment I've collected it and start making decisions based on the insight that I've gained. So it's been a pretty whistle-stop tour. As you can tell, I could go on talking for a week about this. There's loads of stuff that we could loads of value that the software brings around data collection, forward-looking planning, budgeting, forecasting, and the whole process around that within any area of the organization. I think the last thing I'd like to point out here, or at least two things, this is not just about finance. You could use data from across the organization. So it could be FTEs, it could be sales, could be expenses, income, funds, you name it. It's fundamentally data is just data, but it all ends in finance. The other thing I'd like to mention is coming back to that platform piece. So, you know, there are solutions out there which is just about collecting data, but in this case it's much more than just collecting data. It's about forming an opinion on that data, using the built-in AI to augment that opinion or to underpin that opinion. You've got the Microsoft add-in that allows you, or add-ins I should say, that allows you to create up-to-the-date board packs, management packs within PowerPoint, within Word. So it really is a platform that allows you to do all of that within the single interface, coupled with robust security. So I think that leaves us about a minute to answer any questions, but hopefully that's been a good overview. So have any questions come in?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so thanks for that. We seem to have quite a few questions here, and yeah, I mean, it seems like there was a lot more you could show. So I think if anyone does want to book in a full demo and speak to the team about this, please yeah, ping us a message at Millennium or Unit4, perhaps through your portal, and we can put you in touch with Oliver's team. But I think I'll hand over to Sam in a second. One of the first questions that came up was, are there many Prevero customers using Unit4 Financials?
Yes. Now you put me on the spot if you want me to give you names, but yes, I mean, it's integrated. In fact, I think there's a public-facing little demo that shows a change that flows all the way through. And also, if you want to post, budgets and forecasts and plans back, you're able to do that. But certainly, there are customers within the Unit4 family that are using, multiple products integrated together.
Right. Lovely. Sam, do you want to?
Okay, we've got a question here from Matt. Can we dynamically link to Power BI or Tableau?
So as far as getting the data into a third-party tool, yes, we can push data out into various locations, such as data warehouse, which would be used to consume the data by one of those tools that you mentioned. And we can also consume data directly from those tools or the databases that those tools run on. So you are able to integrate the solutions.
Okay, thanks. We've got a question regarding single sign-on. So we've got SAML/OAUTHE. So is there integration for that for a single sign-on? Is that supported?
Single sign-on is supported, yes. SAML, yeah. I think I can see these questions as well. I'm really itching. What does the A?
Right.
What does the A stand for in the FP&A? I can't ignore that. It's a nice easy one. So FP&A stands for Financial Planning and Analysis. There you go. Shall I have a read of some of these questions, or?
Yes, please do.
Time to do that. So this looks a lot like Excel pivot tables. Well, yes, I could see that there'd be some parity. I'm hoping that it's a bit like that, but a lot more. But anyway, so it's combined with Coda Excel. Fine. What can Prevero Unit4 FP&A offer over and above the two packages I've just mentioned? Yeah, of course. So Excel, we spoke about being, multiple versions of the truth. It proliferates. You lack control, you lack skill, and in fact, most of your time you're tracing errors. To be honest, most people using Excel, they're tinkering with formulas rather than actually analysing the data and adding value to the business. So I think there's clear differentiators, and I've spoken about that. As far as the Coda for Excel, so Coda for Excel, yeah, it's about collecting data from budget holders. But when you think about performance management, which is FP&A falls into that bracket, or vice versa, it's much more than just collecting data. It's about being able to perform that what if analysis, supposing interest rates go out, how does that affect my whole business? What resource do I need in order to achieve this goal, in order to, I don't know, create a new service, a new product, a new project, that type of thing. So I would say that Unit4 FP&A offers the capability definitely of those two items, but I would say that it allows you to deal with a lot more data, a lot more joined up, and also potentially more real time across the organization, rather than just, like I say, about just standard collecting data and pulling budgets together. It's really the full performance management agenda that's being dealt with. We could have a very long and detailed conversation, but I'd certainly recommend let's do a full demonstration. I think some of those capabilities will come to light as you see that. Yeah. So can we apply statistical distributions to underlying drivers based on historics, then see the resulting distribution on resulting EBITDA, etc.? The short answer to that is yes. You know, it's that simple. So depending on what you mean by statistical distributions, fundamentally it all comes back to being maths. Distributions, which just allocating data based on profiles. Yep, that's exactly what you can do with the solution. Certainly when you think about profitability, you know, allocating costs and things like that, that's exactly what it does. Underneath at its heart is a big calculator. So yes. On a forecast basis, yes, forecasts and plans are really, context is given to those by us being humans. I would say there's nothing particularly different from a forecast, a plan and a budget. It's just how we use them. They're all, you know, generated by maths, they're all generated by data. And of course, you're able to perform forecasting, rephased forecasts, mid-year forecasts, rolling forecasts, plans, budgets, long-term, short-term, as you need to. Can you give a name of one of the Unit4 financial users? I shouldn't have read that question. I already said, don't put me on the spot with names. I'm sure we can get one. Link to click, same answer as Tableau. It's possible to you know, to move data about and have it consumed by third parties. FP&A, any automated connection to financials? Yes, so there is integration between Unit4 FP&A and financials. As I say, there is I believe it's a public facing video that shows a change being done in both environments and that being trickled through to the other. So that is, you know, integration between our own products is key to us, and it's being worked on, developed all the time, but fundamentally, yes, it's integrated. So hopefully that's I didn't go too fast. I was very conscious of time. I mean,
no, that was a rapid Q&A session. Well done for getting through all those questions.